So I mentioned that the electronics can get fairly extensive, and this probably shows you how so. Where to start, really? There's all sorts of stuff everywhere. Well, let's start with the junk box, because this is basically a random collection of everything that doesn't necessarily fit somewhere else, or stuff that I should be sorting out into other boxes itself. In here I got some power couplings for that I've chopped off of various wall warts over time. These make great plugs for when you start wiring your stuff up. Just random bits of garbage wire. Yeah, I definitely need to clear all this out. There's a sound module that you plug into lights. Little LED toy. We'll talk about more of these in a second. Let me put this over here actually. If you go to a store or go online to shop and you buy a power supply, a wall wart is what I'll be calling them, you can pay $6 to $20 for each one of these. All of these right here are tag sale buys, less than $1 each in some cases. People are throwing these things out. Really, if you can, don't waste your money on the big stuff. After a little while, hit a few tag sales, you'll have a huge collection of these that you won't know what to do with. And for power supplies, you're looking for anything from 3 volts all the way up to 12, 15, 18 is getting kind of huge, but all that can be met with resistors and to step the power down. The two important factors about this, you'll see here that I've written on these here, I've got 1A and 510. And all that is just an easier way to read all the stuff on here. Output 5 volts, 1 amp, 1000 milliamps. Go over here, 4.5 volts DC, 300 milliamps. 4.8 at 350. 5 volts at 1000. I didn't write down this one. Let's take a quick look here. 5 volts at 2000. So there's all sorts of different variations here. 4.5 at 300. I already looked at that one. 4.5 at 600. All these different sizes are going to be useful at some point for some kind of model. I light a lot of my models whenever I can, so this is definitely a good thing for me to have on hand. I've got another box. This box has everything from 1 to 6 volts, or 1 to 5, and then I've got another box of these, similar size, that goes from 6 to 12 volts. All different milliamp ranges. You know, if you only have like 2 LEDs, you really only need like 50 milliamps, maybe 100 at most. Whereas if you got something like this, which is probably going to have a lot, or the Polar Lights Enterprise, you might want 1000 milliamps. So all sorts of variations in those is definitely good. And then there's direct current and alternating current. The direct current ones are a little more useful, but alternating is just as fine. Over here I've got a few spools of fiber optics. I got this from the fiber optics store. I can definitely recommend them. Great prices, one of the only suppliers out there. Fiberopticstore.com, or you can go on eBay and look up the same name. Get yourself a sampler pack, $30. Gets you like 0.25, 0.5, 0.75 millimeter spool, 50 or 100 feet of each. Definitely worth having. It's definitely an investment. If you think you're going to go for lighting stuff, buy in bulk, and I'll definitely be talking about that here. Or go to tag sales like that stuff there. The heat shrink here, if you go to something like Radio Shack, you're going to pay $5 for just a few little pieces like this many. I buy this stuff by the yard. There's a really huge flea market here in Los Angeles that happens once a month. There's an electronics booth. All he does is sell electronic stuff really dirt cheap. So the heat shrink, like I say, I buy that by the yard. It's like 3 yards for $1. Chop that up into some useful size for storage, and then chop it up. So I've got it usefully sized for any of the electronics I'm doing, and then chop it up further from there. I've got a little electrical tape in here. The only thing this stuff is good for is using on electronics, so definitely pick up a spool. Got another box of miscellaneous LEDs, wires, and stuff like that over here. It's an extension of the junk box, basically. Resistors. I'll talk about those in conjunction with the LEDs here, but before I talk about those LEDs, let's talk about these right here. So this little flasher toy actually belongs with this bit of fiber optic. and there were 2 of these in a pack for $1. So the fiber optic may be useful, maybe not. Having a spool of it is definitely more useful, just because this is all fixed length and sizes. Get the power going here, but the most important part of this toy is that RGB flasher there. 2 of these for $1 definitely beats any price you may pay anywhere else. Something like this would probably go for $6 or $10 for one of these at Radio Shack. Don't waste your time at Radio Shack. They're a total rip-off. Monstrous Pirates. Here's another really cool toy for $1. Not only does it light up like this, let's get both lights off here for the full effect. But this actually has a CMOS chip in there that has like 5 or 6 different functions to it. So you can pull that LED. There's 3 different LEDs in here, a red, a green, and a blue. Not 1, but 3 of them. And it's all wired up to the CMOS to do all these really cool effects, which are definitely useful for various models. So this is something you want to keep in mind. Check out the dollar store, because you're definitely going to find some good finds for really great prices. So all this stuff is made as junk, but really you can't go wrong if you do a quick look around. Tag sales, dollar stores, flea markets. Here's another flea market find. Parallel printer port from the old computer days. Why is that useful? First, it's a 25-pin cable, and it's 25 feet long. You strip that out, and you've got 25 strands of 25-foot cable. What's that? 600 feet of wire for $1 is what I paid for that. Go to any other place and you'll pay $5 to $10 for a 100-foot spool of wire of similar gauge. And gauge refers to the size. And I'll talk about that more later in the actual build. You don't really need heavy, thick wire. This thin stuff is perfectly good for the kind of wiring we're going to do. Switches. Again, these are things that I've found over time, just randomly collected or even bought at flea markets. There's push buttons, toggles, rollers, momentary switches, flip switches, everything you can possibly imagine. 3-state switches, 2-state, and that's basically on, off, or in between for 3 states. You got to have one of these if you're going to put some wiring in, but you can just, of course, wire up your model so that when you plug it into the wall it lights, or you can do a switch. There's another kind of switch out there that I haven't gotten yet that I really need to, that are called magnetic reed switches. They're basically a very small glass enclosed switch that you put on the inside of something, and then you use a magnet on the outside to power it up. So if I put a magnetic reed switch, say like right here underneath the surface, all I have to do is put a magnet on top and that'll turn the lights on. Take the magnet away, the lights turn off. There's momentary switches and there's regular switches for those, so I'll definitely deal with them more as we get into the electronic stuff. Wire cutters, definitely a requirement there. Soldering gun, I recently heard about a thing called a soldering pencil, which is a bit more elegant version of this. Or if you got a soldering iron, you can't get away with without it. And of course, a couple tubes of solder. Solder wick is good for getting all the solder off the soldering tip. Alligator clips, great for momentary testing. Clamp these onto your wires, hook them up to the power supply, and you can tell if your lights are going or not. This heat gun here is basically a hair dryer. This was like $10 or so. If you don't want to get one of them, a standard lighter is always good for melting the heat shrink and various other purposes. And I think that's mostly it for most of the wiring stuff here. As you can see, it can get fairly in depth. Oh, the LEDs.